I've been talking about the Nintendo Switch 2 and the hype and the build up to the launch and how I generally think this is one of Nintendo's most disastrous products to date. I think even compared to the Wii U, if you look at the Wii U and how big of a flop that was, the Nintendo Switch is just showing so much disappointment already. We talked about it. We talked about the fact that you're essentially paying a subscription to use a microphone button. We talked about the paid hardware demo, which is supposed to show you around the system and how it works. We talked about the overall fact that games are being priced at $80 a pop and how just in no universe, even with tariffs, even with the inflation and progress that, you know, games have seen over the past decade or so, does that reflect the price of $80 a pop. And so, yeah, anyway, Insider, this is Nintendo's worst case scenario.
There's no better way to start this episode than with a quote. So here it is. I don't want to blow things out of proportion, but this feels like a true crisis moment for Nintendo. Those are the words of former PR manager for Nintendo of America, Kit Ellis, talking about the backlash to the Switch 2. And it's fair to say there has been a lot of backlash out there. This was Nintendo's golden opportunity to take the insane success of the Switch, to present the future, and to lock in their dominance. Now you've got people talking about the Wii U. You've got people talking about pricing, about things that feel a little hostile to the
So let's take a look at this right here. The Nintendo Switch sold over 150 million units. It sold, let's see, DS 75 million units. The Wii was 101 million units, and the DS 154 million units. Now the Wii U, obviously being the worst by far, only sold 13 million units, which is just beyond embarrassing for a company like Nintendo, right? And if you do the math, it's about 13% of the amount that the Wii sold. So if you maybe assume that it's going to do similar numbers as the Wii U, that would be their second worst or worst selling console of all time. It probably would be second worst, but the pricing is not something that is friendly to consumers. It's not wallet friendly. You know, like cost-conscious consumers, especially with inflation and tariffs and stuff, are probably going to look at this and they'll say, yeah, I think the Switch works just fine. When your mother was telling you when you were younger that you didn't need the new Xbox, the one you have right now works just fine, the reality is it works just fine because the other one is so much more expensive. And so that's probably something that parents are going to be telling their kids a lot this holiday season.
You've got people talking about pricing, about things that feel a little hostile to the consumer. So this is not what Nintendo wanted, and things could get worse before they get better. But that, of course, is only if you can even pre-order a console, which many of you can't. Spicy news first. So Nintendo have indefinitely delayed Switch 2 pre-orders in the USA and Canada, and that's explicitly because of the tariffs. My Nintendo members are going to get invites from May 8th, but as for everyone...
So what they've done is they've put in a system to make it so that those who get access to pre-orders are vetted Nintendo fans. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy. Like, they made it so that the people who have first access to the pre-order of the system are people that are, like, actual fans of the company, and they have to prove it. I kind of understand that for some reasons. Like, I've heard people say that it's a good anti-scalper measure. Like, it's going to deter people who are just trying to hoard the system and resell it for an expensive price, like what happened for, like, the PlayStation 5. And that probably is true. I also do think that it's going to deter parents of children who would want the Switch 2, because how is a father going to prove that he is, you know, a fan of the company and stuff like that? You know, like, he's not going to be like a My Nintendo member or whatever the thing is called, right? So, yeah.
Else? Well, literally no clue. According to Doug Browser, who's of course CEO of Nintendo of America, the tariff costs were not factored into the pricing of the console. That is what he said, but according to analysts, that's likely just some PR spin. If you want evidence, you only have to look at, well, the Japan locked Switch, because it has been priced more cheaply. This really is quite something. Now, that is...
Yeah, so how can you say that the tariffs are not playing a part?
If you want evidence...
Nintendo says US tariffs were not factored into the $450 price tag of the Switch 2. But then look at this, right? This is more of a PR statement, TBH. Nintendo will, of course, have accounted for as much as possible prior to announcing the new price. What they and no one else expected was a significantly higher 46% tariff. That's what is leading up to the price reassignment at this point. So when the person says that if it was the tariffs or if it wasn't the tariffs, right? If the tariffs didn't play a role into the price, then how come the Japan system is so much cheaper?
You only have to look at, well, the Japan locked Switch, because it has been priced more cheaply. This really is quite something.
It doesn't make sense.
something. Now, that is when tariffs would have been a comparatively minor impact. Now they're, quote, something we have to address, and that may not just be a delay. So to get into the tariffs, Chinese Switch 2s. Again, that's if these tariffs actually do end up fully being implemented at the full amount, which is, well, who knows, basically. But the Chinese Switch 2s could have an import tariff of 145%. Vietnam did get a reprieve, so Nintendo are basically going to spend the next 90 days trying to get as many Switch 2s into the US from Vietnam as is humanly possible. But in the worst case, analysts at DFC Intelligence are suggesting that Nintendo may not raise the price, but what they may end up doing is lowering the volume shipped in order to lower their risk in that market.
I think that this is also something they should have done with the Wii U. The Wii U had way too many systems and not enough buyers. It was a supply and demand issue. They were oversupplied and under-demanded. So I think with this, obviously Nintendo and the data analysts for how much should be produced based on like the perceived consumption level, like they'll probably get it right this time, or at least closer to right relative to the Wii U and how wrong that was. But I definitely think you have to be on the more conservative end in terms of like production. It's not even a question, especially when you look at like the way in which like the tariffs are affecting this whole operation. Like, yeah, it's just not even up for debate.
Keep that in mind for later when we'll talk about the kind of shocking impact that could have on sales. And of course, if you're worried about scalping, yeah, you really should be if you're in America. Right. That would suggest that anyone wants to buy the console. And if you'd look online, you'd certainly think, wow, nobody wants the Switch too. I don't think that's the case, but the backlash is fairly real, and in many cases, it's actually quite fair. It's fair to say Nintendo have not had a backlash like this since the 3DS in 2011, and at the time, that was treated as a fairly monumental event, right? Where they basically had to betray their initial purchasers. So doing some sort of price cut after launch for the Switch 2 would be similar.
Xbox lost loads of market share, all because of one bad product launch, Xbox One, and they are never getting it back. Now Nintendo wants to repeat that chunk of history. All that will be left is Sony. So yeah, Sony has been really well behaved in terms of like among other consoles and other companies. Like if you look at the PlayStation, like PS3 was amazing, PS4 was amazing, and then PS5 is also really fucking good. Like they haven't flopped ever. Really, they haven't. Like the PS2 was also good, and then the PS original, now we're talking about gaming history. And so, I mean, it's just crazy, like especially when you compare it to all this other stuff. Behaved, they are raising the PS5 prices in Europe. I didn't hear about that. So that's pretty bad. Why is that what they're doing? I don't know. But point is, I think like if you compare Xbox to PlayStation and Nintendo, I think Nintendo probably comes in second place. But Xbox, I remember they had done something, right? Hold on, Xbox, was it the Game Pass controversy? Yeah, so I think Game Pass was something that was, people are saying that it like ruined Xbox and stuff like that. But Nintendo's turn to get roasted is what I'm seeing.
Similarly brutal, right? If launch people, because of tariffs, had to pay a humongous amount for the console, then the tariffs go away, other people get it for cheap. Yes, that would feel bad. Even if it wasn't their fault, it would be a massive PR issue for Nintendo. But here's the thing, even without tariffs, people are saying that this console is too expensive.
Imagine flexing 1080p.
Nintendo. But
it's 2025. And they're flexing 1080p.
Bad. Even if it wasn't their fault, it would be a massive PR issue for Nintendo. But here's the thing, even without tariffs, people are saying that this console is too expensive.
That's crazy.
Not only the console, also the games. And really, they're not wrong. For many people, justifying $450 and then $80 for a game is really goddamn hard.
It's not okay.
Data,
you can't justify
it. This is Statista data for the US. It suggests that over the last 7 years, you would have been taking home between 0.7 to 16.8% more than you were whenever the Switch launched. Obviously, there's a very high range there. It likely will be somewhere in the middle for you. Big picture, people are not feeling like wages are keeping up with inflation. And they're
well, not just wages, I think the quality of games. Most people are having a better time playing older games than current releases. AAA games are struggling pretty massively. I think also if you look at games that are popping off right now, you have like Schedule 1, which is a game which is, it's not made by a AAA studio and it's performing insanely well. And so when you look at people and you look at the market of games being this ridiculous, and then you have people saying GTA 6 is gonna cost like $120. I mean, can we get fucking serious? Why would you not just head over to like Goodwill and then see if they have an old PlayStation or also repo? Yeah, also repo. Why wouldn't you just look on like eBay or go to Goodwill or something, get an old system, and then play some of the classics that you can get your hands on for just a lot cheaper? If gaming is, just a hobby that people have in between, work and sleep, why would anyone put up with this bullshit? Why would they put up with with these like insane prices for a company that has basically abandoned them? Why are you all splitting hairs over consoles? Just buy a PC, it's not that deep. Well, obviously I think everyone has a computer, either a laptop or a PC, but console gaming is like a unique experience that for a lot of people is something they prefer and something they enjoy. And so I don't think it's crazy to say that when these companies are like torturing us with prices, that retaliation is not to be expected. I don't think it's crazy. Like I think you should expect a level of backlash, especially when you look at how much they've been trying to get away with. Like, it's not just this stuff. Man, am I crazy, or is $80 for a game is not that bad? If you look at the trend of game prices, then we've been pretty complacent at $60 and $70 being normal for a long time. At some point, inflation will just catch up. Okay, so I understand what you're saying, but you also have to understand that like the quality is not fully matching. Maybe I would be okay paying $80 for a Mario Kart game if it wasn't a fucking Mario Kart game. My point, and I had made this in my last Nintendo video, is there has to be a new IP, a new banger from Nintendo. Like we talked about this, the last IP that they had released that was original and saw great levels of success and critical acclaim was Splatoon. Everything is using the same IP. Like, I'm not paying $80 for a fucking Mario Kart. Mario Kart gets played, my age demographic, they only use Mario Kart for a drinking game called Beerio Kart, where you play Mario Kart, and if you're like last or something, you have to just chug a beer. And you can achieve that on any fucking Mario Kart. You can achieve that on the Wii U, the Wii, whatever. And so it's not worth $80. No, it's just repackaged garbage. People are sick of remake fatigue in movies, and I think they're sick of this sort of remake fatigue in video games. Like, they're just using the same assets that they've been using for a decade and then upcharging. It's crazy. $80 is insane because it's itching towards $100, which no game in recent memory has ever been worth. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so not trying to go too hard on you, but $80 for a game is pretty bad. You can also use purchasing power as a justification that shouldn't follow inflation. I think so. I'm not sure I fully understand what you're saying, but I think I agree, right? Yeah.
A lot of costs these days. That absolutely makes a switch to Sting. But regardless of any increase, it feels like you buy less. In our last video on the topic, as an example, we pointed out that the richest 10% of the US population is currently paying for 50% of consumer spending. That is quite the stat. So between inflation, the last recession, and a lot of other economic factors, the majority of people do seem to have less buying power. So when Nintendo appears and says, hello, you should pay $80 for the new Mario Kart, 33% more than for the last Mario Kart, that will hurt for people to hear.
Well, of course.
On an emotional level, it will feel like a bit of a betrayal. Quite literally.
Of course it will, because content-wise, it's also just not, it hasn't scaled properly. You can do a photo where there are probably a dozen game copies on your lap. You can take a photo of your lap filled with 12 game copies, and that little photo flex is probably, it only took you like $50. Like, you basically spent $50 to get your hands on all these old games.
Surely it will feel like they are being left behind by the economy broadly, and in this case, Nintendo specifically. And to the majority of people, that increase could be the choice between groceries and a video game in some cases.
Yeah.
That's pretty rough. And it's not just in the US. Even in Japan, there was actually pushback. Regional analysts, like one we often go to, Dr. Serkan Toto, pointed out that the cost of games had gone up by 52%. That's really goddamn big. That's surprising even to me. So even the region-locked console pricing could not balance that out. And if you weren't in the loop, basically, the Japanese Nintendo Switch 2 is way cheaper, but to compensate for that.
What about EA thinking about putting ads in their games? Well, EA and Ubisoft have been biting the curve pretty hard. And I think when you look at the trend of greed in video games, Nintendo is kind of falling in line right now. They're a little bit late, but I also think that in this case, it's actually better never than late. People say it's better late than never. I think it's the opposite here. I think Nintendo, they would have been just fine making an affordable Switch sequel with features that are not even worth flexing. pricing. So it's actually shameful that they would bring this out and showcase it with everything, you know, that it's offering, and then with that price tag attached. I mean, it's fucking ridiculous.
It's knocked to Japan. That was supposed to make it make sense for the Japanese economy, but even in Japan, they're not particularly thrilled. But to temper that ever so slightly,
100% free-to-play gaming for games just isn't worth it when you can get food or something nice for yourself, and there are plenty of free games only if you're on PC. I honestly, like, that's not even a bad take. The amount of stuff that you can get and the entertainment you can get from it, like, it's not crazy at all. Like, Fortnite is completely free. You know, I mean, I still play Overwatch 2. That's free. And so you have access to a lot of different games for no money, and you can get endless entertainment from it. Why would you pay? Especially when a lot of the games that are being priced at a pretty penny aren't even worth it. Fortnite is basically just filled with ads. Lol, all collabs are for marketing. Yeah. I mean, that is true. Yeah. I love Wales for making so many games free. Well, any person who's stocking up on Clash of Clans gems, yeah, I mean, they're the reason that there's no ads in that game. So basically,
I do have a really interesting...
When price increase but incomes don't, non-essentials like video games become just that, non-essentials. The Act Man. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Pressing little tidbit. This was pointed out by Automation, where basically that conversation about the rising cost of games, that's been a little bit impacted by the relative cost of gacha games, right? So apparently that is absolutely surging up, especially for parents wanting a game for their kids. But anyway, the core point is cost of games going up, cost of the gaming hobby is going up. This is happening with Nintendo. It's a justifiable worry. Prices are up, wages broadly are not, and now a moat is being placed around your hobby. You can't go to another castle with better performance and graphics here because, well, it's Nintendo. A lot of people are saying, wow, just buy a Steam Deck. I think it's fair to say that those are different audiences. So for a lot of people, they are essentially being told that you can't play anymore. And Nintendo's response to that concern reminds me of...
That is basically like telling somebody who's hungry and they showed up to a pizza shop that's closed that they should just go to the Burger King across the street. Well, they wanted the pizza. And so although if the ultimate reduction of what they want is just starvation or non-starvation, they're going to get the Burger King. But at the end of the day, this is not feast or famine. This is like, you know, I'm enjoying something. It's a hobby of mine and I'm particular with my hobby. It's really that simple. And so like people don't like getting pushed out of something they enjoy, and they are. The industry is suffocating.
Of the Xbox One and the internet requirement. Here's the big quote. We recognize there are some people who may not be able to afford the Switch 2's price point. That's why we wanted to make the other Switch platforms available. This was from Doug Bowser talking to CBC. It really does appear to be all part of the business plan. And some people have compared this to the very disastrous Xbox One launch where CEO Don Matrick, one of the legends of gaming, it's fair to say, told the press that if someone didn't want the always online Xbox, they could just go and purchase an Xbox 360. So that was not great PR for him.
So
in this
stupid.
case, though, it's
so
Doug
dumb.
Bowser simply acknowledging
essentially just calling people who like your video game systems broke. Like, that's insane.
trends. Because, yeah, the economy's kind of different now. Console generations, in a way, are less real. There's less of a hard definition.
And when I'm telling you to, if you can't afford it, of course. When I'm saying that you should actually just get like an older game system, I'm not doing it because I'm shaming you for being broke. I'm shaming them for being greedy.
People can't afford to move and often don't see the point of moving without meaningful exclusives existing. Right. And a factoid to sort of prove that is that we're only just starting to see PS5 sales overtake the PS4 proportionately over the last few months. So that is not humongous sector-wide growth, especially because the, well, PS5 and PS4 are the dominant thing. And Microsoft...
Great quote. You're all brokies, haha, we don't want your money. Wait, now you're not buying our stuff? Please buy it. You made your bed, now you have to lie in it.
Position in the market's kind of slumped. It's kind of rough, actually. And what it shows is the last generation of consoles lasted a long time into the current generation.
That's true.
And a lot of those big first-party games, well, they still shipped in the PS4 for like 2 years.
I also think that's a good thing.
In fact, PlayStation aren't going to stop PS Plus cost benefits for
I think if a console has a long lifespan, it's generally good for consumers. Yeah, because there's a large window where people are able to enter and not feel excluded. Like if you got a PlayStation 4 basically at any time before the PS5 dropped, it was still a good like Christmas gift. And I think that's something that consoles like they thrive off of.
PS4 games,
like a long lifespan is always good for consumers. I think it's also good for publishers and developers because the hardware kits are something that they're now familiar with, and so
January 2026. It's kind of wild. For the third parties, the biggest games like Call of Duty still support the PS4 and the Xbox One, which again, mind-boggling to me, but it does make financial sense. That's the consoles that people own. You can't not sell games on old consoles when those games these days cost so much money to make, and there's a big install base who will actually buy them. And what that means for the people who sell consoles is now they've actually got to play really quite the long game. The prior generation cannot just be abandoned in the way that it was, and that means Nintendo need to make it clear to people that the Switch 2 games are not just Switch 1 games, despite there being backward compatibility.
The problem is that in order to prove that, they would actually have to make new games. In order to prove to consumers that the Switch 2 games aren't Switch 1 games, they can't be Switch 1 games. And so what I'm saying, and I have been saying this, is there needs to be a new IP, something recognizable as different than everything else that's being shoved in front of our faces. Oh, another Mario Kart. Yeah, we can do this for the next 5 decades. No, we can't. Make a new IP. Make a new franchise. Where is the new franchise? It's been fucking Mario Kart bundles for like 2 decades. I think people are tired of it. Like it's getting to a point where the fatigue alongside the price hikes and everything else, the lackluster hardware, it's just enough. Like the outrage it is completely justified and it's completely rational. So yeah, like I'm just not enthused when I'm being shown a racetrack. Oh, it's a racetrack. I haven't seen one of these since like fucking every single time they do it. Like come on, bro, it's frustrating. And then when we talk about like, oh, new IPs, like, oh, it's a new thing, we saw the paid fucking hardware demo. Exhilarating, Nintendo, great stuff. They made a wheelchair game to showcase the mouse capabilities of the Switch 2 Joy-Con. Like, that's stuff that is just crap.
To be a strong perception of value to draw people forward. And partially that's going to be exclusive games that will stay exclusive. But it's also about making those games seem more valuable. And that's why we've got to talk about perception. Speaking to Gene Park at the Washington Post, Doug Browser confirmed that, as an example, the $70 benchmark is for a game like Donkey Kong Bonanza, and that will be most premium games. He said, though, there will be, quote, variable pricing across the line. Right. And what they'll be doing is considering the development of the game and the
Did you guys also see that Mario Party Jamboree is now $20 more expensive? It's been out for like a year, not even, on the Switch, and they're like, yeah, on the Switch 2, it'll be $20 more. Actually, like, no meme, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Like, go fuck yourself. Really? What on earth have you done to make this thing that was just fucking created worth $20 more on a new system? Actually despicable.
Expectancy that
it's
game
so
will
shameless.
Give people long-term value, and then they will price accordingly, which basically means Mario Kart's going to be $80. If it's a sort of game that will become like
also
a cultural institution
ridiculous.
that you'll be playing for a decade, it's going to cost $80. He says that otherwise they'll monitor audience trends to see what the future will look like, which, to be honest, implicitly sounds like them saying, if not enough people buy the $80 version, we won't do it again. But it's probably also him saying, if enough people buy the $80 version, we'll probably do it again.
Exactly.
So we'll basically have to see. But you can be damn sure that broadly, if the industry can nudge those prices up, yeah, of course they will. You saw the whole discussion about GTA in that. But still, to a lot of people, a $60 game is just as out of reach as, say, an $80 game these days, which is something that's actually built into Nintendo's plan. What they say they're hoping for, right, is inelastic demand for their products that basically means, well, they can just
this looks pretty cool though,
by that price. So that is the concept that regardless of the price, the quality of their product will ensure a consistent audience. And this is not a new concept for Nintendo. Their whole idea is that their console should be sold at a profit. Their games should be profitable. And we can see that perfectly encapsulated in...
I think that there's a Goldilocks this porridge is too hot, this porridge is too cold, this porridge is just right. There needs to be a Goldilocks equilibrium reached where people will respect a company's desire and need to make profit, and also understand that there's probably a level below a level between squeezing your customers dry for as much money as possible and basically having the thinnest margins possible. There is a sweet spot. Like, this is probably more toward the greedy side of things. Probably.
One game, and it's one game that has sparked a lot of pushback.
Right.
And that is Nintendo Switch Welcome Tour. Because that welcome cost you $10. Now, Nintendo's Bill Trinan argued that, quote, with the amount of care and work that they put in, they think it's a fair price for a minigame collection that also explains the details of the console. Of course, everyone, me included, we all just look at Astro's Playroom and we kind of say, what the fuck, guys? Or say, Wii Sports. And based on both those two examples and the sheer fact that this is basically a thing that demos the console's features, that it should sort of be bundled with your console as a general thing. But here's the thing, Nintendo actually never really thought like that.
And it's all to show off features of the system that they've boasted in the promotion for the system. So there's no like Easter eggs or anything like that. Like, it's just so beyond shameless. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but like, come on. It's literally called a welcome tour. You don't pay for a welcome. Imagine like touring a house that you might buy and the real estate agent is like, yeah, it's $10 to tour the house. Well, what? Or imagine going to a movie theater and it's like, okay, if you want to sit through the trailers before the movie, that's going to cost you $10. Are you serious? So I have to pay to be exposed to advertisements? That's fucking insane.
That we learned from Reggie Fils-Aimé's autobiography that both Iwata and Miyamoto had
it's a disaster,
over a period of months to give Wii Sports away for free. Which is kind of wild. Here's the quote. The ever-present smile and impish squint of Mr. Miyamoto's eyes were gone. Quote, neither of you understands the challenges of creating software that people love to play. This is something we constantly push ourselves to do. We do not give away our software. It's a fun quote. I can absolutely see where Miyamoto's coming from with that, but from a sheer
should be free, just like Astro's Playroom on the
PS5.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, it's also a selling point, and like part of the selling point being separate from the original price tag feels like sneaky and like just kind of manipulative, right? Like, yeah, like Astro's Playroom, being part of like the PS5 makes it so that when you're looking at the PS5 and the price point, you're like, oh, okay, well, there's also this baked into the cake.
I think it's fair.
Yeah, I think that's why they're in the, wait, hold on. Yeah, that's why I don't think they're the future. They have to make money through other solutions, and a lot of these are really annoying. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree.
Say that like Wii Sports being there on every Wii was fairly pivotal to its success. Mm-hmm. They, though, may argue that that's just me doing a backwards rationalization, and that if it did go the other way, and let's just say Wii Sports cost $20, maybe it would have been just as much of a cultural juggernaut, and people also would have bought it, thus netting Nintendo quite a bit more money. So Nintendo in this case are charging $80 because, quite frankly, they think they can. And right now, very many signs do actually point to them being right.
That's
sometimes that tells them more.
It's sort of just like seeing what you can get away with. Pushing the envelope as far as you can without receiving backlash. And they are receiving backlash, and so we'll see what this actually results in. But, the key takeaway is that, like, yeah, people are fucking done with it. And so if they think that they can price it and people will buy it, well, sure, people being, like, just a general referring of people more than, like, one person, like, yeah, people will buy it. Like, yeah, but how many people will buy it? Probably not a lot, and probably less than you would have expected, or I should say less than if you had, let me try to explain this properly. Okay. So if you make something $80 instead of $30, you only need half as many people to buy the $80 one as you do for the $30 one. Because if you're selling something for $30, you have to have double the amount of, $60. I fucked it up. Let me try again. If you're selling something for $30 and then someone else is selling something for $60, you need to sell double what the guy who's selling for $60 is to make the same amount of money, right? With the $80 price increase, obviously if they sell less, they'll still make the same amount of money because it's increased in price. I still don't even think they'll sell enough so that the price increase will even out the expected earnings. That's what I'm saying. Take your time, sweetie. Okay.
more interesting story than you'd expect. This is one of those cases. So, according to VentureBeat, analyst firm DFC downgraded their Switch sales forecast over time. Now, remember, that's not because they're not expecting people to buy the console if, say, they're given the chance. It's because they're expecting Nintendo to ship fewer consoles. Now, they've downgraded from 17 million to 15 million.
Which is pretty bad. So, yeah, essentially these projections are lackluster, and that's kind of all we need to see. So, yeah, I mean, that's basically what we're looking at here. So, yeah, pretty sad coming from Nintendo. It sucks to see. It really does.